Hi. So my company is Gecko, and we actually have customers that they say things like, backups don't make me money. We get invited in odd situations or in long-running relationships in order to try and help customers have better operational management for their databases. And these, one of the things we frequently talk about is backups with everyone, because everyone knows that backups are super important, and you never ever know if you have them until you've actually tested a restore. We have these great images of tapes, but you don't necessarily know what's on them at any given moment until you've actually pulled them out. So we have lots of opportunities at Gecko in order to test the two main types of backups that we do. MySQL dumps, of course, you all know those. And those are a lot like saying, you know, I have all of the instructions to rebuild my database, and here is my data. But they take a lot longer to restore, as we all know, as we've all run into. And then you also have the option of cold clones or snapshot clones, depending on your file systems or your logical volume managers, things like that. But the problem with clones is that if you have a problem in your database, be it a logical corruption or a physical corruption, it is replicated in each of those clones. So you sometimes end up with problems that you don't know you have until you go ahead and test and restore them and exercise your database. But I'm preaching here to the converted, of course, because you all do backups, and you all check your restores. So I just want to make sure that you are all, in fact, converted. But here we go through these things, and we still run into problems. And one of the things we're always guarding against is user error, as you might guess. And these may be unintending developers doing things silly, like the Facebook guys said, if I'm about to do something, do I still have a backup in case I do something bad? Or sometimes they're junior sysadmins doing things like running a MySQL dump and then not realizing, in fact, wow, that's an awful slide, not realizing, in fact, that it says use schema there. So even if you actually say MySQL -d schema test and then import the schema, it will still write over your running database. And sometimes these customers don't hit the panic button early enough. They actually say run live data against this newly imported schema. In fact, this is a problem we had about 3 weeks ago, where a junior DBA overwrote a running schema in production and then was not noticed, didn't actually notice for about 4 hours. So there was live data going against this. And what we ended up having to do was import a MySQL dump, replay all the bin logs, and then start parsing out after the time of catastrophe, we'll call it, parsing out using regular expressions what was the MySQL dump inserts and what was actual valid data being updated. And of course, that's with regular expressions. And then, of course, we have to guard against hardware failures. There are lots and lots of ways with disks and RAIDs and all sorts of fun stuff that you can get bad data within a data file. And then you end up with corrupt data, of course. And corrupt data can look like all sorts of things. In images, of course, it can look like pretty pictures, but sometimes you just find that your database crashes and won't come back up. So in those moments, you will again sometimes find that you will have the backups also have this corruption and you just haven't exercised it yet. So you have to go ahead and open them up and try to pull the data back out. Now, of course, all of this is happening under the greatest of time pressures because no customer wants his database down for more than, say, a minute at any given time. And so you have to be available and open to the possibility that your backups aren't what you hope they are, even though you've tested restores, and you have to be able to change directions rapidly. So we ran into a case where we had cloned backups, and they were lovely and grand, and they opened, and the databases came back up, but there was some corruption actually deep in a data file, and we ended up having to do an export of a terabyte-sized table, and on an import, that turns out that it would take about a month to import, 4 weeks, we estimated. And so we had to do a forklift upgrade to 5.1 in order to get partitioning. We weren't planning to do this during this recovery, but we in fact had to. And so in doing that, we found that the doing the forklift upgrade was important because with the B-tree index being larger than the size of the memory available on the server, we ended up hitting that hockey stick curve whereby, like I said, it would take 4 weeks to import. 4 weeks is not some amount of time that somebody wants to be down. So the CTO on my first slide who said backups don't make me money, well, he actually was running Oracle, but he also didn't have backups at all. And he ended up having corruption inside his data files as well. So ultimately, we ended up having to unload the data files by hand, of course. And from there, we were able to reconstruct most of the data. And he immediately started spending lots and lots of money, as you might guess, being able to set up backup projects to handle tapes, and spending lots and lots of money with Gecko, which of course I will not argue with, in order to get lots of consultants on site trying to get this data exported out of the raw data files and from there be able to import it back in and piece together what data we had. So ultimately, having backups and knowing that they open doesn't necessarily solve all of your problems, or even exercising all of the data in the tables doesn't solve all your problems, but it gives you a multitude of options and ways that you can make choices in order to make sure you have the data that you need and available to you when you need it and be able to recover from it at that point. So this is my talk on backups and recovery, and I'm hoping that all of you do, in fact, exercise your recoveries and exercise the data in those databases. So, thank you.